Hey guys, Tarke here, and I wasn't planning on making another video about this, but with the most recent podcast going out and the Xbox topic still going, I wanted to give a more succinct, well-rounded viewpoint on the topic. My initial video was kind of just like a reaction, and it was very abrasive I literally uploaded the video within an hour of me finding out about the thing. Now, I'm going to cover a lot of things. I'm going to be making a lot of analogies, put this in the background. This is mostly just going to be an auditory thing. But first off, for people who don't know who I am, because the last video had a lot of content from people who weren't used to my content, I've been playing the game since February of 2K13. As you can see from these supporter packs, I have more. You can't show all of them. I am not very financially responsible. For the record, I do not think that the amount of money that someone spends on this game justifies their viewpoint. I've spent a lot of money on this game. This doesn't make my viewpoint any more valid than anyone else. I am one of the oldest PoE streamers, funny enough. I did stream in beta, and I've been streaming on and off for a long time. I've been around the block a bit. My credentials, as it were, is I've been a piece of toast. Yeah. I've been sharing intimate breakfasts with podcasts with the OG, which unfortunately, due to my scrubbiness, never got put out there. I've been on State of Exile, Never Forgitty, Sweet Prince, making awkward chin faces, and most importantly, I've been an intimate lover with Zazarian. So, I'm a slag. Now, that is just to give you an idea of I have had a lot of contact directly, indirectly with most of the PoE streamers out there, and this I want to raise because you cannot always trust every single content creator's viewpoint they put out on their channel. That isn't in reference to any one of the people I just showed, any one of the people I'm talking about. It is in our interest for the console port. The reason being, if more people play the game, we have a larger potential audience. I am a very small channel still. I've been doing stuff for a long time, but very simply, the more people playing the game, the more I have to benefit. So with that in mind, take anything that any content creator says about the Xbox port with a grain of salt, because it's in our interest. Another thing, a lot of people are very worried about being too critical of certain game companies. Right. I love GGG. Most of the PoE community loves GGG. Even Project PT loves GGG to a certain small extent. If we are, as content creators, incredibly bashing of a company, they are less likely to give us exclusives or access to things or this, that, and the other. So whenever you watch any content creator's point of view on a topic which is directly related to a main source of their revenue, again, I'm small, I don't really make any money off this, so I can kind of afford to burn bridges. Well, I can't, because anyway, you get my point. So just take anything with a slight grain of salt, take other people's opinions with your own, meld them together. Now, with that all out of the way, I am very much on the fence of the Xbox port. I think there are definite pros and there are definite cons which can come from it. It is still very early days. If you're completely 100% in favor of the port and you think there's nothing wrong with it, you're being unrealistic. If you think this is the death of the company and everything exploding, you're being unrealistic. Okay. So, with all of that out of the way, there's one thing which I don't think I've heard anyone else address, which I'm very interested in, and that is the core MTX model and how it will change. Now, the most basic answer of that is, for example, as you can see with all my fancy supporter packs, I've got a lot of, exclusive legacy skins and stuff that you just cannot get anymore. I know that both the Xbox and the PC clients will have separate servers. The Xbox client will be free to play, and we will assume it will have some sort of MTX model. We don't know exactly how it will work. Now, if I decided that I wanted to go and play on the Xbox, would I be able to link my accounts? I know that my Xbox characters are just my Xbox characters. I know that my PC characters are just my PC characters. Can I link the two? Will I get access to my old exclusive stuff? Now, I think it's very unlikely that the main goal of the Xbox launch was for PC players to go over to Xbox. There will be some people on my most recent videos where I've spoken about Xbox. There have been quite a few people saying, I'm actually really looking forward to this. I've been wanting to buy an Xbox for a while, and I think I'd really enjoy it. There's been a few people who've said, and this is actually quite interesting, I've got a really bad PC, and I struggle to play Path of Exile, and for me it'd be cheaper to buy an Xbox, Xbox One, sorry, I keep saying 360. It'd be cheaper for me to buy an Xbox than it would for me to upgrade my PC. So that's actually something which is very relevant. You know, if you're from somewhere where you don't have access to a lot of disposable wealth because of your age, where you are in the world, just your current position, whatever. I don't have that much disposable wealth right now. If I could take back some of these supporter packs and have the money in my bank account, I probably would, but that's kind of by the by. If you already have an Xbox lying around, or you could go, well, I could just buy up an Xbox One for like £200 or £300 and know that I'm going to have a very stable and solid Path of Exile gaming experience, and that's amazing for those people. Now, obviously, since this is a Xbox exclusive, as far as we're aware, we haven't heard anything different. At some point, a very large check has been written out saying this is exclusive with Microsoft. Don't give this to Sony, don't give this to Nintendo, don't give this to whoever else makes content, well, consoles. So there's money there. There's also the fact that a larger potential audience means more potential MTX buyers. Will the current MTX pricing stay the same? Because if you look at the prices of the MTX, they're kind of expensive. So, you know, you can buy the comics and you can get stuff from that, but let's just go with, you know, newly added. Now, we've had the mystery box thing going on for a while now. Mystery boxes are a very good source of revenue for GG. They're wanting to keep pushing this kind of content. You have all the portals, so on and so forth. You have the wings, and, you know, these are expensive. These are very expensive. Now, I am not a console player. The last console I had was an Xbox 360. I stopped buying console games, you know, 5+ years ago, probably even further back than that. I don't know how likely a console audience would be willing to go, oh, this free-to-play game is really cool, and then go and spend £32 to get a pair of vampiric wings, or $32 even, when directly on a console you can go, well, I could get a full AAA game for this. Another thing that you need to remember is, I'm sure that there are some form of sales and stuff which happens with console games, but console gamers have less access to stuff like the Steam summer sales. So this whole viewpoint of the price of games, that's sort of something you've kind of got to take into account. People who are like pure try-hard console players, yes, they do have cheap indie games here and there. Yes, they do have sales. They do get some promotions from having online subscriptions. But if you kind of go, ooh, do I really want to just drop $32 just to get a pair of wings? Maybe, maybe not. So this makes me wonder, will the MTX prices go down for console to get more revenue? You also think if there's a much larger potential audience, does the price of MTX need to be so high? I and many other content creators have argued for a very long time that the current pricing of MTX is extortionately high, and that GG would probably actually get more money if they lowered the price of things. If you lowered the price of things, people would be more likely to initially invest into the company. One thing that most people have probably experienced at some point, you're playing, you know, insert free-to-play game here, and your first investment, like your first, I'm going to buy skins or whatever, that's always the hardest. Once you've done that, especially when it's a point-based system, once you've bought your first set of points, like myself, I bought the Brute Sword Supporter Pack and I've got some points lying around. Once you buy that first thing and you have some points lying around, you're much more likely to then go on and buy more. So for example, in this case, let's say I really wanted the Gore portal effect. Oh, well, I'm so close, I may as well just buy a few more points, just to bridge that gap. And then once you're into the system, you're more likely to keep dipping back in. And by lowering the initial barrier to entry, you're going to get more people coming in. And with a much larger audience, can you really justify such a high price of MTX? So that is a very interesting thing. Now, if the Xbox announcement went out, and with it GG said, and to celebrate the Xbox coming out and the new potential audience, we are lowering the price of MTX, then you need to think of how would the audience reaction change. If you're someone who's very much against the Xbox port, but you knew that the price of all the MTX would potentially be coming down, would that change the way you think? And that's just something that I kind of want to leave out there, and I'm very interested to see how the MTX model changes. The next big topic, trade improvements. One of the first reactions I had when it came to, wait, Xbox, seriously? How the hell will trade work? We've been expecting some form of trade improvement for a very long time. Like, it needs to happen. Now, it would make sense that these trade improvements would happen in some case for the Xbox client, because this is a game which needs trading. You have a 6-socket chest, you need to link it up, you need to buy fuses, you need to buy chromatics. They won't and cannot enforce pure solo self-found onto the Xbox. It just doesn't work in this kind of a game. It worked when they did it to Diablo, because while you need stuff like gems in Diablo, you're not required to color and link your gear in a particular way. It's much easier to grind out unique items in Diablo because of the boosted drop rates than it is in this game. You can't, like, imagine they enforced solo self-found or only trading with people in your party with Path of Exile, and you wanted to play low life Whispering Ice. Okay, cool, so I just need to grind the game until eventually a Whispering Ice drops, and then maybe a Shavs drop. People who've been playing as long as I have, people who've been playing for the last league, how many Shavs have you ever had drop for you? How many combs have you ever had drop for you? How many of those did you not get during Horrendous League? This is a game which really doesn't work within enforced solo self-found. It can work. I've played solo self-found for full leagues before. A lot of people do that. But for a wide global audience, it's very unlikely, especially for a console audience who are most likely, without generalizing, they'll be most likely less used to the excessive grindy nature of Path of Exile. If you look at recent ARPG style releases which have gone on to console, I'm talking very recent history, we have stuff kind of like Destiny and the other shooty one, which was a massive flop, also beginning with D, I think, and you had the Plague areas. I played the beta of it, I made a video on it. It's gone out of my mind, apologies. A lot of the big complaints were that, oh my god, it's taking such a long time to get a new gun upgrade. Please, developers, buff drop rates, buff drop rates, buff drop rates. They buff drop rates, they buff drop rates. Oh, I've got nothing to do. This game is dead. Oh. I've seen a few other people make similar content, similar topics. There's another Path of Exile YouTuber called Video Fletcher. Another small guy. I've been watching his stuff a fair amount recently, and he was a big console creator. He used to make a lot of stuff for Gears of War, I believe. And he was sort of talking about that particular thing, and he was kind of questioning, how will this model, just the game model, transition over onto console? If you go onto Reddit, there's already a lot of rage on Reddit. The vocal majority or the vocal minority, that whole thing of, the people who are unhappy shout the loudest, and it's just such a small, chamber of people, but they shout so loud they force change. That is very announced on consoles from what I've seen and heard. So by having two very loud, imagine having two different Reddits, the PoE PC Reddit and the PoE Xbox Reddit, and just two forums of pure hate. I know that sometimes good stuff goes on Reddit, but there's a lot of angry people on Reddit. I use Reddit, but it's true. And just imagine being the company who has to handle this just two spheres of just, oh my god, what do? We need to appease two different things. At some point, GG has had a very long history of not buckling. But you need to wonder, will GGG or the separate Xbox development team have that same resolve? How will buckling happen there? We also need to think about mapping out. So we know that on the Xbox there's only 4 flasks, and on PC there are 5 flasks. And you go, okay, cool. Now, if you look at the strengths and the OP-ness of a lot of the new flasks they're releasing, again, this console creation has apparently been in action or in development for a few years now. They were saying, did you enjoy Forsaken Masters? Well, this was in development since Forsaken Masters. If you know that you only have 4 flasks on the Xbox, it's unlikely, very unlikely, I think, that we're going to have 2 different versions of flasks. I think it's very unlikely we'll have the Xbox version of a Vessel of Vinctar and a PC version of a Vessel of Vinctar. Now, on the PC version, Vessel of Vinctar might be fucking ridiculous, which it is. But if you've only got access to 4 flasks, then suddenly having so many ridiculous flasks is less of an issue because you can't use all of them, right? If you're playing a health build on Xbox, you're already using 1, maybe 2 health pots. Most people like running 2 health pots for health flasks. So that's 2 gone. That leaves you with a Quicksilver and then a Vessel. Well, suddenly stuff like Sin's Rebirth, Dying Sun, all of these become less of an issue. So that's one thing I'm very interested in when it kind of comes to that whole thing. The balance situation. A very good analogy I've seen both Ziggy D and Project PT make is how skill design could potentially change. Now, while GG has been very good at coming out and saying, look, this will not affect the PC version. It is unrealistic. Even if you're not doing it intentionally, you need to remember that in the back of your mind, you are aware that there is an Xbox version. So a skill like Stormclaw is a good example that people used. Was Stormclaw requires some precision. Now, obviously, the more AoE you have, the less precision needed. But it's a case of, I take my mouse, I drop it over here, here, boom, 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 the screen dies, right? Now, that kind of placement is not that bad. You could map it out on a controller. It wouldn't be quite as snappy as just having a channeled flame blast where you just hold down a button and it just grows and grows and grows rather than doing lots of quick taps and movements. But fine. Now, let's say that you wanted to make a new skill and you'd go, okay, so how's this going to work? How's this going to play out? How's it going to work on a mouse and keyboard? How's this going to work on a console? Even if you're not thinking, oh, this idea won't work on a console, somewhere in your head you will think, yeah, this could be a lot of development time used to port this over. Well, we could just release the skill only for one version. It is very, very unlikely that you are going to waste development time, because that is exactly what it is. If you have a skill which only works, even if it only works on the console version, and it doesn't translate well to the other, you could go through all the balance time needed to make the skill well-rounded, go through the time making the visual animations for it, the possible MTX animations for it. And are you really going to sink all of this time in development into making, for example, Spectral Throw and all the 3 or 5 different MTXs of Spectral Throw if you can only put that out to potentially half of your player base? In the case of maybe Xbox one day pulling ahead of the PC version, 60%, 70% of your player base, and vice versa. Then if you go, well, we could just make a skill which sort of just shoots stuff out from directly in front of you and you just hold it down or you just press it once, that's obviously a lot more appealing. So potential skill design is somewhat limited by this. Now, again, this could also be seen as a very good thing. The reason why this could be seen as a good thing is that you're less likely to make stupid name-locky skills on a console. So there's a difference between every single melee skill being a global nuke which just hits the entire screen in a full 360 and it makes all other skills useless. But you're very unlikely to make old-school style skills with a console in mind. Now, you could argue that, well, Tarke, it's very unlikely they're going to make Glacial Hammer 2.0. Yeah, it is very unlikely, especially in the current state of the game, but it's even more so onto a console version. Another thing is skill animations are becoming more and more flashy. Now, that is, for some, considered a good thing. If you're playing on a console version, and if you think about what consoles represent, and you think about ARPGs, you think about Diablo, and you think about all these other things, and what you want something which looks cool, and you want it to feel smooth. From console version existing, we are more likely to get smooth-looking, cool-looking skills, because it just sort of makes sense. If technically they're somewhat less, advanced, you need to make up that oomph feeling somewhere else in the kit, either through good sound effects or through good visuals. There is good potential for that coming from that way. Right. Optimization. Obviously, it is much, much easier to optimize for a set box than it is... Hello, cat. For a set box than it is for the wide spectrum of PCs. As far as I'm aware, there's like the Xbox One, and then there's the special Xbox One edition. But basically, you're just looking at one set of kit. And Xboxes are bad PCs. They're just PCs. That's what they are. So by having all of this focused development just on one kind of machine, it is much, much easier to optimize and make a product which runs smoothly on it. So it is very likely that having an Xbox version, especially with the, tests and checks put in place by Microsoft, it is very likely you're going to have this horrible, buggy, clunky port over. It's most likely going to run very smooth. It even runs the risk of running smoother than the PC version. So for, again, going back to the argument, the people who can't afford to have super fancy computers, or what this one or that, that, well, I could just have the Xbox version and the game's just going to run. It's just going to work and it's just going to be there. I don't need to worry about, this league, my equipment doesn't work. It seems that every league, it doesn't matter what system you have, what graphics card you have, what sound card you have, what motherboard, even what bloody, desk microphone you have, at some point your random piece of kit will break with something new they've added. It might be that DX11 is great, but it doesn't work with, your chair for some reason. I've had multiple cases where I've got friends with amazing machines, and they're like, dude, I don't know what you're talking about. This is fine on my rig. This is fine. New league comes out, I'm like, what the... I'm playing on a toaster, I've got 2 FPS, how does this work? You could potentially skip that entire nightmare just going over to the Xbox version. Again, by developing for a bad PC, it is incredibly, like, it makes sense that if you've spent all of this time developing a port to a bad PC, that you'd be better at optimizing lower end equipment. So for people who don't have the super fancy equipment and still don't want to buy an Xbox, there's a lot of potential there, there's a lot of potential improvement. That is a good thing. One other thing, going back to this whole new versus old player, and the people... Oh, come on, I want to show you my profile. I'm just going to just go back, can't I? So the people saying that, well, you're getting these old elitists who don't like the way the game is going. This is one thing that I kind of want to talk about, and I want to make an analogy. The main games that I have played for the longest time have been ARPGs and MMOs. For me, it's been World of Warcraft. I've been playing World of Warcraft since the Burning Crusade, and I've played it all the way through. I've taken times away from the game, I've taken times to the game. For people who aren't following the WoW scene, one of the biggest arguments right now in the WoW community is the discussion of legacy servers. There are people who prefer the older state of the game who go, look, I preferred the older state of the game. I want to play the older state of the game. The new expansion, Legion, amazing expansion. Don't get me wrong, really cool expansion. But I want to go play vanilla. I want to go play Burning Crusade. Please, Blizzard, give me an official legacy server so that I can still enjoy the older version of the game. Old school Path of Exile was buggy as all hell. It was buggy. You had to have OOS macros. An OOS macro was /OS, out of sync. You'd hit it, and your character would rubber band. Because desync was a massive issue. If you don't know what desyncing is, it's basically the client and the server thinks your character's in a different place. On your screen, your character's fine. On the server, you're actually 3 rooms down in a room with a bunch of volatiles. Volatiles didn't exist then. You're in a room full of a bunch of skellies, and then you're like, this is fine. Hang on, I haven't seen any mobs for a while. /OS, teleport, you're dead. And you're like, oh. That used to be very common. People used to, like, macro /OS into all of their buttons. I remember mapping with a guy who would literally, you'd be mapping, and you'd be spamming it, and all your character would be jittering from side to side. A lot of people put up with that bullshit because they enjoyed the state of the game. At the time, Path of Exile was hard. Path of Exile is still hard now. People who say that the game has changed, oh, the game is so casual now, the game is still hard. I, personally, am not a very good technical player. I am easily distracted. I'm one of those guys who plays like 12 hours at a time. I get heavily fatigued. I normally stream. I'm not streaming due to technical reasons, but I stream, I do YouTube. My attention is off all over the place. So when I'm playing, I'm very often distracted. I'm looking at chat, I'm doing the thing, and old school PoE, everything was a constant threat. Partially because of how bad the system was, but everything could kill you. Every single thing could and would kill you. Now, there are still things which can kill you. Mostly the extreme higher end content, the extreme higher end bosses, and then, you know, the random one-shots because of the perfect scenario. Either you had a momentary lapse of attention and you died in a second, you got hit by a volatile, you got hit by porcupines, just a random sub-fizz something, just crit you, you took 2 hits in a row, you died to a bleed, you die mostly to inattention. This was very different back then. Back then there was a constant sense of fear and dread. Now, no game is better than the other. A lot of people prefer the new version of the game. A lot of people who tried the old PoE didn't enjoy it, couldn't get into it, and much preferred new PoE. Now, this isn't to say that one version is better than the other, but they are 2 distinctly different games. They are 2 distinctly different games. I often prefer the feeling of the old game. I really enjoy the way the game works now. I spend all my time on it. If you look at my YouTube, just briefly, let's look at my YouTube. I've been making 1 to 2 videos every single day for the last few weeks. I have a lot of content on my channel about PoE. There's also some WoW stuff, there's some more PoE stuff, blah 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 blah. I like the game just a little bit, right? If I wasn't so invested in the game, I wouldn't spend as much time on it, I wouldn't spend energy creating content for other people. This is a game enjoy. I do miss the old version. Now, a lot of people missed the older version. They missed the slower version, the more intense version of the game, because it was a lot more intense. There was a constant sense of I could die at any moment now. I need to play more cautiously. And you knew when you were safe, and you knew when there was times of I need to take it slow. Nowadays, what often happens is the game is mostly around how quickly you can move, and then you die to random inattention, or you do still die to the very hard content, but the very hard content is up here. If we look at the deaths I've had this league, and again, I know I'm not an amazing character or player. I know that I'm not the best. I'm not saying, oh, all these new scrubs. So if we just think, the deaths I've had this league, I messed up in Uberlab. That killed my last character. I've died 2 other times in hardcore to Breach. And one was while leveling. I died to Esh just popping up and killing me with his lightning ball spam. And the other one was I was playing a melee sweep slayer with like 6k HP, bunch of armor, and I was like, feel pretty safe, and then I just got randomly one-tapped by a super juiced up Cold Breach. Now, if you think about that, I didn't actually die to the core game. I died to league mechanics. Breach is an amazing league. Breach is very scary. Breach has the potential of killing you. I really like Breach. Uberlab. Uberlab is difficult if you play right side of the tree build, but it's very easy to trivialize Uberlab. I mostly died to messing up. Fonts were up. I went in without flask removal. I was tanking the boss off screen with a decoy totem because I was a bow build. I wasn't paying attention to where he was. I had vulnerability on me. He did the aerial attack. I just got like 2 taps and died. And I was like, oh, that was dumb. Azaro isn't part of the core game. Breach, we don't know if it'll be added to the core game, but Breach isn't really the core game. If you kind of look at the things which kill you, aside from the on-death effects, you can still die to Guardian. You can still die to Shaper. It's very hard content. It's Zeri's really hard content. I've never killed at Zeri. I've never killed Shaper. I've never killed Guardians. I didn't play last league when all of Atlas was first introduced. This is my first league with Atlas. And with Zeri, I'm a hardcore player. I've always played hardcore. There's like once every 2 or 3 leagues, I try out softcore for a week, but I don't enjoy softcore RPGs. I just instantly go back to hardcore. I've never felt the drive to chase the super endgame bosses because what I enjoy is making builds. I enjoy coming up with a concept, seeing if the character works, and then I go, okay, this works, get it close to about level 90 and go, okay, I want to play something else now. That is sort of my experience. Now, back for old school game, going back, there was a lot of, can you make this work? You've made this skill, you've got this idea, you've maybe got a unique, can I make this work? And it wasn't a case of, well, can I make this work for Shaper? Is this a shape of our build? It was a, can it clear maps? Can I survive? And it used to be a lot more about the initial journey. It used to be a lot more about the leveling and the getting through the early map process. These days, the game is much more endgame focused. One is not better than the other. They are just 2 distinctly different versions. The reason why I've gone on to that point for such a long time is there are a lot of people who've gone, well, I've kind of always hoped that Path of Exile would kind of go back to that older approach, and they've watched the game get faster and faster and faster, and they've thought, well, maybe with this, 3.0, Act 5's coming out, we might get really good rebalancing, we might remove a bunch of the double dipping, the game might become a lot slower, or maybe get some trade improvements. There's potential of maybe we'll get some glimmer. I think there are a lot of players who kind of, they've known that the game has been changing, and it has been changing mostly for the good. The game has been growing. The game is growing excessively well. So as a content creator, well, I've kind of like missed some of the older things about the game. For me, it's been worthwhile because I still enjoy the game as it is. I still enjoy it a lot, and I'm seeing it grow, and I'm seeing more people get to enjoy the game. So that's really good. And yeah, do I enjoy the game slightly less because of it? Yes, but I think overall it's worthwhile. It gives me a much larger potential audience. So as a content creator, going back to that whole point, it's worthwhile for me. Now, a lot of people were really hoping that with 3.0, there'd maybe be some glimmer. I think a lot of people had this thing of maybe it will go back to the good old days, right? And then the Xbox thing comes out, everyone freaks out, and they go, oh my god, it's confirmed. 100%, it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's never going to go back to the way it was. And for the people who've been playing these games for as long as they have, I've been playing the game for, getting close to 4 years now. It's not like you can just, oh, well, if you don't like Battlefield, just go play Call of Duty. there's not lots of ARPGs out there. There's not loads of super hardcore ARPGs out there. A lot of the thing which made Path of Exile big in the beginning was its niche, and it had a very strong niche. It's like if you looked at the Dark Souls series and they made it more and more approachable. And there's a very big difference between dumbing a game down and making a game approachable. I sent emails to Chris Wilson directly back in 2013 when I first started streaming, because when I was streaming back then in the beta, open beta I believe, the thing was no one knew how to make builds. But a lot of people don't know how to make builds now. You could argue, Tarke, you don't know how to make builds. But anyway, back then it was a case of there were like 3 people streaming, and what's Crypt playing? I'm just going to play whatever Crypt's playing. And what I did is I used to just stream, you know, Project PT style. Well, this is pre-project, but anyway, I used to just stream build making. I would just sit, people come chat and say, I want to make a fireball character. And I'd go, oh, okay, cool. And we'd sit and you'd work it out and da-da-da. And, you know, I used to get about 100 people watch me back then, which for Twitch is quite a big deal. I was like, wow, really? Okay, cool. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of people who really want to get into this game. And back then the YouTube scene was much smaller with Path of Exile. I thought, maybe the game could really do with some like proper tutorials. And I sent a message to Chris Wilson. I was like, hey, would you be available to do like a brief kind of interview thing? I'd be kind of interested to see how, you know, the new user experience would change. How you could improve it to, you know, make the game grow more. And for a long, long time, it hasn't improved. If people like Ziggy D, Lifting Nerdbro, anyone who makes content, like those two sprouts because they make a lot of like beginner-based guides, if we weren't out there, then the game would be a lot smaller. Not because, oh, content creators are so amazing, but because think about where a lot of people learn how to play the game. Looking at guides. How did I learn the game? Crypt. I first tried playing Path of Exile before this, and I was like, I don't get it, this seems shit, stop playing. And I was like, I grew up playing DT, and the game just seemed like really just pointlessly archaic, and there was a lot of just stuff in the way, and I got up to like mid 40, 30 or 40, and I was like, wait, what? My character's terrible, nah, screw this. And then I watched Crypt stream for a few weeks, and I didn't play, I just watched him, and I was like, I was starting to get up, and I was learning how to make builds, and back then it was like, okay, get shock, okay, good build, we've got shock, we've got this, let's go. And he got me into the game, and a lot of people have gone into the game through content creators. Because the game tutorial is so bad, because there isn't really one, and a lot of the mechanics are so bad, with the Xbox version, there is so much potential for GGG to improve a lot of the core introductory mechanics and explanations and just make the things more approachable without actually dumbing down the game. A good example being, change the times that you get certain skill gems. Do you really need to get movement abilities so late into the game? Do you need to get access to some skills so late into the game? Do you need to have some classes who can't buy certain skills? Could you have a more straightforward atlas system, the sense of you could at some point talk to someone and they tell you roughly how it works, better tooltips, maybe minion skills could have some actual tooltip on it. You could fix up a lot of the wording in the game. There's a lot of wording which seems kind of counterintuitive, there are a lot of mechanics which shouldn't work together which do. One of the best supports for Burning Arrow before they nerfed Less Duration was Less Duration, but Burning Arrow doesn't have the duration tag. No. But if you have the Burning Arrow jewel, that has a duration tag on it. And because the jewel has the duration tag, when they made the jewel, they added the duration tag to the skill, even if you're not using the jewel. So there's hidden tags on quite a few skills. That's just a fun example I like to go to. Back when Restoration first got buffed with the crazy more multiplier, it was like the second best support after weapon elemental damage. And I remember on the big Berlin PoE meet, I would say, Rise, what's the what's the best links to the Burning Arrow? And I'm like, what? I'm like, yeah, why was talking about? It's like, no, just go on. I don't know. And Restoration's like, what? And you go through the whole thing. I did this a few times. If you were asking those, like, was Starkey at the Berlin meet up chatting about Restoration? Yeah, he wouldn't shut up about that. I was like, okay, cool. There are a lot of stupid little mechanics like that in the game which you don't know about. There is a lot of potential with a new console port for GGG to really look back and go, hang on, let's fix the game's initial experience. Let's really improve the starting experience. Making Act 1 feel a bit smoother, making just normal difficulty feel a bit smoother, removing crawl, which is something which is going to happen with Act 5. There's all potential for just like the base leveling experience to become a much smoother experience. That doesn't mean easier. Dark Souls is a very punishing game, but it's quite straightforward. It's very like, okay, I get it. I know what I need to do. I need to dodge the things. There might be a boss or a minion. We're like, how do I kill it? Oh, wait. Oh, I need to do that. Okay, cool. But it's very difficult. You can make difficult games which are approachable. And there's a lot of potential with this port for a lot of the things which have been really bothering me about the beginner experience to really be improved. So yeah. And it's been quite a long video and I've gone off on quite a few tangents. But I just kind of wanted to put it out there. And I feel like I've done decent-ish case of, you know, relaying what could be good about it, what could be bad about it, so on and so forth. If you disagree with anything or have any other viewpoints, anything you think I missed out, leave it in the comments. I'm happy to respond to it. I've been Tarke. I'll make another video if I feel like it's worthwhile. Have a good day. Bye-bye.